It was a clear and sunny Friday in Dallas, Texas. The date was November 22nd, 1963. The streets were filled with thousands of cheering spectators lining the motorcade route to get a glimpse of the young and charismatic President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Riding in an open-top limousine with his wife, Jacqueline, beside him, the president smiled and waved to the crowd, unaware that he was just minutes away from his tragic and world-shaking death. What happened that day in Dealey Plaza shocked the globe, triggering decades of investigation and conspiracy. The assassination of John Kennedy remains one of the most heavily scrutinized events in modern history, not only for its brutal execution in broad daylight, but also for the enduring mysteries that continue to surround it. President Kennedy had arrived in Texas as part of a political trip to mend fractures within the Democratic Party ahead of the 1964 election. Texas was a key state, and the president knew it. He was accompanied by his wife, Jackie, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, and Texas Governor John Connally. The mood was celebratory as the presidential entourage made its way from Love Field Airport toward downtown Dallas. Crowds lined the sidewalks waving American flags, holding up signs, and calling out to the President and First Lady. The presidential limousine, modified 1961 Lincoln Continental, proceeded slowly through city, giving the public an intimate view of the Kennedy couple. As the motorcade entered Dealey Plaza, it made a slow left turn from Houston Street onto Elm Street, passing the Texas School Book Depository, a 7-story building that overlooked the route. At precisely this moment, shots rang out. At first, there was confusion. Some thought it was a motorcycle backfiring. Others assumed it was fireworks. But within seconds, panic and horror set in. A bullet had struck the president in the upper back, exiting through his throat. Another more devastating shot struck his head, causing a fatal wound that instantly incapacitated him. The president slumped into Jackie's lap, and the motorcade sped off toward Parkland Memorial Hospital. Governor Connally, who was seated in front of Kennedy, was also struck by a bullet that shattered his ribs and wrist. Despite his injuries, he survived. At the hospital, doctors worked frantically to save the president, but it was too late at 1 p.m. Central Time. John F. Kennedy was pronounced dead. He was just 46 years old. Jacqueline Kennedy, her pink Chanel suit stained with blood, refused to change out of it, later saying, "I want them to see what they've done." Back in Dealey Plaza, chaos unfolded. Police officers and witnesses scrambled, trying to determine where the shots had come from. Attention quickly focused on the Texas School Book Depository, on the 6th floor near a corner window. Investigators discovered a makeshift sniper's nest constructed from cardboard boxes. 3 spent bullet casings were found on the floor, and near the staircase, officers recovered a bolt-action 6.5mm Carcano rifle. The rifle had a scope and was tucked behind some boxes. Within hours, the manhunt was on. Just blocks away from the book depository, a Dallas police officer named J.D. Tippit was gunned down in the Oak Cliff neighborhood. Witnesses described the shooter as a young man in his mid-20s who had fled the scene on foot. That same afternoon, a man matching the suspect's description was arrested inside the Texas Theater, a local cinema. He was carrying a revolver and resisted arrest. His name was Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine and self-proclaimed Marxist who had defected to the Soviet Union in 1959 and later returned to the United States. Oswald was employed at the book depository, and his fingerprints were found on the rifle used in the assassination. As Oswald was interrogated, he denied everything. "I'm just a patsy," he declared. He claimed to have no involvement in the shooting of the president or Officer Tippit, but the evidence against him was stacking up. He had been seen in the building during the time of the assassination. He had a history of political extremism, and the murder weapon had been purchased under a false name. Traced back to him, the nation was in shock. The president was dead, and within hours, a suspect had been arrested. But the story was far from over. 2 days after the assassination, while being transferred from the city jail to the county facility, Lee Harvey Oswald was shot and killed. On live television, his assailant, was Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner, with connections to organized crime. Ruby had gained access to the basement of police headquarters where dozens of reporters and law enforcement officials had gathered. He pulled a small-caliber revolver from his pocket and fired a single shot into Oswald's abdomen. Oswald died shortly after in the same hospital where Kennedy had been pronounced dead. Ruby claimed he acted out of rage and grief over the president's murder, insisting he wanted to spare Jacqueline Kennedy the pain of a trial. But his actions immediately raised questions. How did he get so close to Oswald? Was he part of a broader conspiracy? Had Oswald been silenced to prevent him from revealing the truth? These questions fueled a wave of suspicion and ignited one of the largest and most controversial investigations in American history. In the days following the assassination, President Lyndon Johnson established the Warren Commission to investigate the circumstances surrounding Kennedy's death. The commission, named after Chief Justice Earl Warren, concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald had acted alone in assassinating the president. According to the report, Oswald fired 3 shots from the 6th floor of the book depository. One missed, one struck both Kennedy and Connolly, causing multiple injuries. The so-called single bullet theory, which proposed that one bullet passed through Kennedy's neck and then entered Governor Connolly's chest, wrist, and thigh, became one of the most disputed elements of the report. Skeptics argued that such a bullet would have had to change direction mid-air and questioned the chain of evidence. Critics also pointed out inconsistencies in witness testimonies, timing of the shots, and autopsy procedures. Over time, public trust in the official version of events began to erode as the years passed. Alternative theories multiplied. Some believed the mafia orchestrated the assassination, retaliating for Kennedy's crackdown on organized crime. Others pointed to the CIA, suggesting Kennedy's plans to reduce U.S. involvement in Vietnam and his actions following the failed Bay of Pigs invasion had created enemies within the intelligence community. Still others accused anti-Castro Cubans, the Soviet Union, or rogue elements within the U.S. military-industrial complex. Even today, more than half of Americans believe there was a conspiracy and that Oswald did not act alone. Several government investigations followed. The Warren Commission in the 1970s. The House Select Committee on Assassinations reopened the case. The committee's final report stated that Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy, though it did not identify the participants. It cited acoustic evidence suggesting a second shooter may have been involved, though later scientific analysis cast doubt on that conclusion. One of the most compelling reasons the Kennedy assassination endures in the public imagination is because of the Zapruder film. Captured by Abraham Zapruder, a dressmaker who brought his 8mm camera to Dealey Plaza. That day, the footage provides a visceral and tragic record of the assassination. Frame by frame, the film shows the president's car turn onto Elm Street, the moment of impact, and the horrifying final shot that fatally struck Kennedy. The film was withheld from public view for years, but when it was eventually broadcast, it brought renewed scrutiny to the official story and shocked viewers with its raw depiction of the killing. Questions also surround the autopsy performed on Kennedy's body. Conducted at Bethesda Naval Hospital, the autopsy was criticized for errors and lack of forensic rigor. Photographs and X-rays were missing or altered, and witnesses reported pressure from higher UPS to conform to the official narrative. Some of the doctors present later contradicted each other regarding the number and trajectory of the bullets. These irregularities added fuel to the growing skepticism. Then there is Lee Harvey Oswald himself, a man whose life seemed tailor-made for mystery. He was intelligent, disillusioned, and politically radical. After serving in the Marines, he lived in Minsk and married Russian woman. He returned to the U.S. under suspiciously lenient conditions. For a defector during the Cold War, he was monitored by the FBI and known to local authorities. In the weeks before the assassination, he attempted to assassinate right-wing General Edwin Walker and was seen handing out pro-Castro leaflets in New Orleans. And yet, despite all these red flags, he secured a job in a building that just happened to overlook the president's motorcade route. Was it coincidence or something more? Jack Ruby, too, became a source of intrigue. In jail, he made contradictory statements, at times claiming his actions were impulsive, at other times hinting that powerful forces were involved. He feared for his life and expressed frustration over not being moved to Washington to testify. He died of cancer in 1967, but not before deepening the aura of secrecy and paranoia surrounding the case. As the decades rolled on, new documents, interviews, and revelations continued to emerge. In 1992, following the release of the film JFK by Oliver Stone, Congress passed the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act, mandating the release of all related documents. Thousands of files were declassified, but some remain sealed or heavily redacted. Each new release brings fresh questions and theories, but no universally accepted answers. The assassination of President Kennedy marked a turning point in American history. It shattered the nation's sense of innocence and trust. It set in motion a series of events that would lead to the Vietnam War, civil unrest, and widespread public disillusionment with government institutions. In many ways, the shadows cast by Daley Plaza still stretch across the American psyche. The image of the young, vibrant president cut down in the prime of life remains etched in the memory of those who lived through and continues to fascinate those born long after. John F. Kennedy's legacy endures, not only because of how he died, but because of how he lived. He inspired a generation with his speeches, his vision, and his commitment to civil rights, space exploration, and global diplomacy. Yet his life and death are now inseparable from the mystery that surrounds them. Every photograph, every witness, every second of film, every scrap of paper from that day in November 1963 has been examined and re-examined, but the full truth may never be known. As we reflect on that moment in history, we are reminded of how fragile leadership can be, how quickly a dream can be interrupted, and how the unanswered questions of the past continue to echo into our present. The assassination of John F. Kennedy may forever remain an open wound, a riddle that resists resolution. But it is also a reminder of the need for truth, transparency, and a government that serves its people with honesty and justice.